Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Stotara Pravikacharya's Divine Grace Abhay Charana Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. From Sekaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sri Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Sri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Sri Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the 10th canto, 53rd chapter, texts 40 and 41. Padbyam vinirya yodrastum bhavanya padapalavam sachanudhyayati samyan mukunda charanambujam yatavan matripi sardam shakivi parivarita gupta raja batai surai sanadair udyata yudai mirdanga sankapanavas Turya bharyas cha jagnire Padmabhyan vinirya drastum Padvanya padapalavan Sachanudyayati samyan Mukunda charanambujam Yatavan matribi sardam Sakivi parivarita Gupta raja batai surai Sanadair udyata yudai Mirdanga sankapanavas Turya bharyas cha jagnire. Devotees, Adbayam nirya drastum Vanavya padapalavam Sajanudayati samyam Mukunda charanambujam Yatavan matripi sardam Sakivi parivarita Gupta raja batai surai Anadir udyata yudai Miridanga sankapanavas Yurya Varyas Chajagnire Padbyam Vinirya Yajastum Padvanya Padapalavam Chachanudyayati Sanyam Mukunda charanambujam Yatavan matripi sardam Sakivi parivarita Gupta raja batai surai Sanadai udyata yudai Mirdanga sankapanavas Turya peryas chajagnire Padmyam Viniryaya Drustam Panavayada Padavam Sachanudyandhyati Samyan Mukunda Charanambujam Yatavan Matripi Sadam Sakivi Parivarita Gupta Raja Bhatai Surai Sanandaya Udyaya Vyudai Mirdanga Sankapanavas Turyam Viryascha Janire. Anyone else? No? Padbyam, on foot. Viniryayo, went out. Drastum, in order to see. Bhavanyai, of Mother Bhavani. Padapalavam, the lotus petal feet. Sa, she, cha, and anyudyayati, meditating. Samyak, totally. Mukunda, of Krishna. Charanambujam, on the lotus feet. Yatavak, maintaining silence. Matribihi, by her mothers. Sardam, accompanied. Sakivi, by her female companions. Parivarita, surrounded. Gupta, guarded. Raja, of the king. Bhatai, by soldiers. Surai, valiant. Sanadai, armed and ready. Udyata, upraised. Adyudai, with weapons. Mirdanga Sankapanava, clay drums, conch shells, and side drums. Turya, wind instruments. Bhirya, horns. Cha, and Jagnire, played. Translation. Rukmini silently went out on foot to see the lotus feet of the deity Bhavani, accompanied by her mothers and girlfriends and protected by the king's valiant soldiers who held their upraised weapons at the ready. She simply absorbed her mind in the lotus feet of Krishna, and all the while mridangas, conch shells, pandavas, horns, and other instruments resounded. So, please repeat. Rukmini silently went out on foot to see the lotus feet of the deity Bhavani, accompanied by her mothers and girlfriends, and protected by the king's valiant soldiers, who held their upraised weapons at the ready. She simply absorbed her mind in the lotus feet of Krishna. And all the while, mridangas, conch shells, panavas, horns, and other instruments resounded. So there's no purport by the servants of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, so I'm going to first read the purports of the Acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, from the city up to the temple complex of Durga, She was protected in a palanquin. She then went 4 or 5 prakostas, about 15 feet, outside the palanquin into the temple, while the guards stood outside in all directions. Mridanga and conchas began to sound. And Jiva Goswami describes a little more in detail. The details are described in 4 verses. She, Sa, who was endowed with such greatness, went on foot out of respect because she was going to see Durga's lotus feet. Durga's feet are described as lotuses because of Rukmini's devotion. If Rukmini is directly Lakshmi, why does she have devotion to Durga? She was constantly meditating on the lotus feet of Mukunda, endowed completely, samyak, with sweetness, which revealed their softness and other qualities, like jasmine flowers. This indicates that neither she or Krishna revealed their greatness at this time. Because she was absorbed in devotion, she was silent. She also walked with devotion, viniryayo. Being surrounded by many people indicates that she would be hard to steal and was thus in great anxiety. This shows the seed of experiencing joy on suddenly attaining Krishna, which is described later. She was surrounded by persons who had motherly affection, matribi. She was surrounded by troops because Rukmi was afraid of Krishna. They were brave, dressed in armor, and had their weapons raised. These were progressively better means of protecting her. Mridangas, Pandavas, and Turyas are drums. Beris are wind instruments. Another type of beri is a drum. Om Jnana Tanamandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Sunyavari Pasyatate Shatarine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Krishna Das Goswami Niti Namine Namoham Sinikashaya Prabhupada Priyayate Sutrida Sudi Nistyam Mam Tasha Vakya Nuvadine. So good morning. We've been reading about this. I'm going to say it's probably before I even came to the movement. I remember hearing some of this pastime and seeing some depictions of Krishna stealing Rukmini, the Brahmana delivering the letter, and then Krishna coming in on his grand horse, bedecked, and taking Rukmini away. And that sort of is the thing that you see and hear about over time in so many instances and movies. It's always depicted as this sort of wonderful occurrence when the hero swoops in and saves someone, So it's a very, on the surface, it's a very valiant and, relishable pastime, particularly if the princess is being, put upon. They're not, there's some injustice. There's always some injustice if the princess is sort of in her tower or she's has been captured and then her hero swoops in and saves her. So that's kind of what it looks like. But when you dig a little bit deeper, there's quite a lot happening here. And we've heard about, in detail, Rukmini's Kshatriya-like qualities. She was a very strategic personality, and actually, somewhere, I believe it's in Krishna book, Prabhupada actually elucidated some of her qualities that sort of stood out, and intelligence was one of the first. So Rukmini Devi, she's the goddess of fortune, as we know. And she was only 13 or 14 years at the time, but she had already, in a strategic move by her brother, and as they did at the time, a strategic move was to marry her to maybe an opposing village prince or, city prince, so there could be peace and harmony. And so that's what had been proposed. And so Rukmini, seeing the writing on the wall that this wasn't really something that she wanted to take part in, had, reached out to Krishna in clandestine fashion to bring him close and and be rescued. So a little bit more about Rukmini. Rukmini was ostensibly a perfect, pretty princess. She was there with her 4 older brothers and her father, who was, he was a righteous king, so he was always trying to do the best thing. And, the brother, Rukmi, that had sort of sold her off to some extent in hopes that there would be some kind of, it was more for his own benefit, but some kind of peaceful, outcome. She saw through that, and it's interesting because at the time, not so much in Kali Yuga or on this planet, women were very, very much, put on a pedestal. They were protected. They were highly guarded. They were jewels, gems. They're a very important part of society, and everyone understood that they always needed this sort of protection, so they would become degraded or like that. Prabhupada says that many times in his book, that women are prone to degradation. So they were, because the feminine nature is one of being trusting and caring and compassionate and loving and giving, all these things. And, unscrupulous people can take advantage of those qualities, which we see happening quite often in this world. And in this particular instance, so why wasn't Rukmini, in the line of thinking that she should be protected, right? Why wasn't she just going along with sort of her fate or what had been laid out for her to do as part of her playing in the temple roles? She herself could actually understand that this wasn't a good proposition. And also, as we previously read, the inhabitants of Vaidarbha were also very, they were giving all their pious credits so Rukmini could marry Krishna. So there was a lot of backing for Rukmini, but meanwhile, Rukmini had her own plan. She had the intelligence to find a suitable messenger to carry her message to Krishna so Krishna would come. And she wasn't really thinking so much about her role, her greater role, her strategic role. That was her own strategic plan, to have Krishna come and, take her away so she could be in her rightful position. But meanwhile, she wasn't really thinking about this other sort of strategic plan that was being carried out. And to that extent, I was thinking about protection, how this is elucidated so much in our scriptures, that women should be protected and, to prevent so many catastrophes in the world. And I was reading a little bit more about that ideal and how when someone is protecting, when there's someone in charge of someone else, there's actually a great responsibility. There's a great responsibility for a king to have the subjects. We were hearing this week about the king being the overseer, but also the caretaker of everyone in the kingdom. He made sure that each and every animal and human was cared for in that kingdom. So protection, giving protection in that way, without exploitation, is actually something that isn't really heard about or isn't really carried out, I'll say, in Kali Yuga particularly, and on this material plane, because there's always the matter of trying to gratify one's senses. And when, whether it be a ruler or a caretaker or a husband, would like to mostly gratify one's senses and have that mentality that this person in my protection or possession is mine. I, me, mine. This is mine. So I'm going to do whatever I want with that. I'm going to enjoy it to my full satisfaction, or enjoy them to my full satisfaction. And that's actually not the dharma of protection. Protection is simply without really self-interest, without self-interest, being able to see an object that they would be caring for, they need to care for, they need to protect, and doing that thing without having a stake in the race, so to speak. I mean, yes, one is by way of an upadi or an arrangement, subjugated to a specific personality, or in a country or under a rule or under that protection. But, in the case of Rukmini, I mean, she could have been married to Shishupal. And, at that point in time in the kingdom, there most likely would have been some level of protection. We see how closely she was guarded. She was doing the thing that everybody is meant to do before their marital ceremony. Go to the goddess of Ambika, Durga, Bhavani, and take the blessings and perform some worship and pray for, the best outcome. Pray to be, a good wife or like that. So she was doing her duty, and up to the point that she got out of the palanquin and she took that little, 15 feet isn't very much, 15 feet's not even from the door to the altar in this room. That's a little bit more than 15 feet. She couldn't go very far. She wasn't allowed very much leeway. But, she knew in her heart at this point in time that Krishna was somewhere. And so she was filled with great relief and also great hope that he would rescue her from this situation that she did not want to take part in. And so thinking of that protection that we should have, ostensibly, we should all have, whether it be protection from a husband, protection from a ruler or the government, which we know is non-existent, or protection from particularly, those persons in our lives that should be seeing us as worthy of protection. It doesn't seem like that happens in our society or in this world. And I was reading some parts just lately. I've been reading a little bit more of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 5th canto. I will admit that parts of the 5th canto can be a little bit harrowing, particularly the last chapter of the 5th canto that talks about description of the hellish planets and conditions that folks can go into if they're not abiding by so many injunctions, Vedic injunctions. And all throughout the fifth canto, we can understand so many lessons that happen with Jada Bharat and Lord Rishabhadev. Particularly, I was wanting to read to everybody the prayers of the residents of Jambudvip, because this actually talks about the supreme husband of everybody is Krishna, because we are all Prakriti, whether we're in a male body or in a female body, we're all Prakriti, we're all parts and parcels of the Supreme. So for us to lord it over another person or think we can, enjoy or exploit someone who is ostensibly under our protection is quite opposite of the matter of being a husband. But the residents of Jambudvip actually discussed particularly about Krishna being the husband of all. So this is chapter 18, text 19. My dear Lord, you are certainly the fully independent master of all the senses. Therefore, all women who worship you by strictly observing vows because they wish to acquire a husband to satisfy their senses are surely under illusion. They do not know that such a husband cannot give protection to them or their children, nor can he protect their wealth or duration of life. For he himself is dependent on time, fruitive results, and the modes of nature, which are all subordinate to you. And I'm just going to read a little bit of the purport, or maybe the whole purport, because Prabhupada really drives this point home. In this verse, Lakshmi Devi shows compassion toward women who worship the Lord for the benediction of possessing a good husband. Although such women desire to be happy with children, wealth, a long duration of life, and everything dear to them, they cannot possibly do so. In the material world, a so-called husband is dependent on the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are many examples of a woman whose husband, being dependent on the result of his own fruitive activities, cannot maintain his wife, her children, her wealth, or her duration of life. Therefore, factually, the only real husband of all women is Krishna, the supreme husband. Because the gopis were liberated souls, they understood this fact. Therefore, they rejected their material husbands and accepted Krishna as their real husband. And that's why actually the gopis and both the gopis and Rukmini, in this instance we see Rukmini, she knows that Krishna's somewhere around, but still she's playing it really cool. She's doing all the things that's expected. She goes on the palanquin to the temple so she can worship, knowing full well she's not going to marry Shishupal, like Krishna's waiting to take her away. She goes, she walks in nicely. It says she walks with devotion, but she's just meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna. And that kind of reminds us of when the gopis are always meditating on Krishna. Meanwhile, they're at home, they're doing their duties with their husbands and taking care of their children. They're doing their things absolutely perfectly because they don't want anybody to know what they're thinking of or what they're doing. They're just waiting for the time that they can go and see Krishna. Everyone should perfectly understand that Krishna is the real husband of all living entities who are described in the Bhagavad Gita as Prakriti, female, not Purush, male. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 12, only Krishna is addressed as Purusha. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan, Purusham Sattvatam Divyam, Adi Devam Ajam Vibhum. You are the Supreme Brahman, the ultimate, the supreme abode and purifier of the absolute truth and the eternal divine person. You are the primal God, transcendental and original, and you are the unborn and all-pervading beauty. Krishna is the original Purusha, and the living entities are Prakriti. Thus, Krishna is the enjoyer, and all living entities are meant to be enjoyed by him. Therefore, any woman who seeks a material husband for her protection, or any man who desires to become the husband of a woman, is under illusion. To become a husband means to maintain a wife and children nicely by supplying wealth and security. However, a material husband cannot possibly do this, for he is dependent on his karma. Karmana daiva netrena. His circumstances are determined by his past fruitive activities. Therefore, if one proudly thinks he can protect his wife, he is under illusion. Krishna is the only husband, and therefore the relationship between a husband and wife in this material world cannot be absolute. Because we have the desire to marry, Krishna mercifully allows the so-called husband to possess a wife and the wife to possess a so-called husband for mutual satisfaction. Notice he used the word possess. In the Ishopanishad, it is said, Tena tyaktena bhunjita. The Lord provides everyone with his quota. Actually, however, every living entity is Prakriti or female, and Krishna is the only husband. That's the third time Prabhupada has said this. Ekale Ishvara Krishna Arasa Bhapritya Yairad Yaiche Nachaya Setaiche Kari Nritya. Krishna is the original master, a husband of everyone, and all other living entities, having taken the form of so-called husbands or wives, are dancing according to his desire. A so-called husband may unite with his wife for sense gratification, but his senses are conducted by Rishikesh, the master of the senses, who is therefore the actual husband. So we can see that Shishupal had already been kind of deemed unworthy, because we hear of so many other successful marriages and the like in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And usually they're not without their issues also, they're not without their problems. And above all that, Krishna is controlling that whole sort of dynamic between the so-called wife, the so-called husband, to have them understand and everyone understand that, okay, they're there, yes, this is okay for some time, but actually, particularly for Vaishnavas and devotees of Krishna, we're able to understand that, all of our efforts, all of our vision, everything should be focused on Krishna, and that actually is making the best use of a bad bargain, because we can take all of our wealth or whatever as grihastas, as married people, and actually shift it that way so we can constantly remember Krishna, we can help others to constantly remember Krishna, we can serve others using that, whatever Krishna has given, whatever Krishna is allowing, and we can actually create a society that is 100% focused, it's sort of like Lord Rama and Sita. When Lord Rama is called, he actually had the Eka Patni Vrata, one-pointed focus. He was one-pointed on that, and if both of the persons are one-pointed focused on Krishna, that's their whole and sole object in that relationship, then it can be successful. But at the same time, as we have heard about the mutual, exploitation, mutual possession, there has to be some caution with that, because it's a very temporary thing. And when there's a dragging down or any degradation or losing that focus of the couple or the pair who should be helping each other toward that goal of Krishna consciousness, and all the while understanding that Krishna's just using them as puppets. Krishna's not really allowing that much to have them go forth with whatever plans that they would like to make. That they're actually, if they remain focused on their goal, then they'll have their full satisfaction of whatever is needed, their quota, as Prabhupada said, but not too much that they can go over and squander it and forget about Krishna. So that's our sort of, as grihastas, those of you who are grihastas, that's our sort of responsibility as grihastas. And, also at the same time, like Rukmini, just waiting patiently for Krishna to come in, swoop in, and save us from our miserable material conditioning, and help us in all respects to remember him constantly and want to serve his lotus feet at all times and meditate on his lotus feet at every possible juncture. So I'm going to stop there. I think there's only a minute left. I'm sorry. There was a lot in this purport I wanted to talk about more, but that's all the time we have. Does anybody have any comments or corrections? Okay. Yes, Prabhu. Oh. Well, I mean, she's a princess. It's very regal. They're in this kingdom. It's very opulent. It's super opulent. And, also the guards that were there, that weren't for her, I mean, it was for her benefit, for protection, but basically, Rukmi and everybody was completely afraid. Yeah, they were suspicious. They were waiting, They had already had word that Krishna was around. And even the king invited Krishna and Balaram to sit on the wedding. So word travels fast in the village. So, So, yeah, it's almost like when you're announcing something, and all eyes are on that person. So they've got more eyes than just the soldiers' eyes at that point. They can actually have everybody watching to see, what's going on, right? So it has to be everything's on display. It's full display of opulence, of grandeur, and also of protection.
Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Bharavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Agom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobha Tamaham bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami Angani yasa sakalem Priya Priti Manti Lasyan Dipan Dikayanti Jiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam
Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham bhajami Govindam Adipurusham
Namo Vishnu Pataya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Sameni Namane Namaste Satsati Deve Gurvani Vajane Nivesesha Shunyavati Basya Jagate Satarane Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Siva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Siva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Siva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Radha Golokanana, Radha Golokanana, Radha Golokanana, Jai Om Vishnu Pada.
Before we do the Shastika, just want to remind everyone we'll be at Harinam Sankirtan at noon today at in front of the post office on Franklin Street in Chapel Hill, and the students are coming back for classes this week, so there'll be a lot of people there. So please come. Hare Krishna. Chaitodarpanam marjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam Shreya Gairavya Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Pratipanam Pranamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Radha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapitani Amita Smarane Nakala Etadrishita Bhakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Dordaiva Midrishami Hajjani Nanuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Suhishuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadaram Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vaha Jagadishakamae Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvare Bhavatad Bhaktir Hoitaki Twai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Grivayata Vabhata Bhangaja Stita Duli Sadra Shimvachintaya Nayanam Galarshu Daraya Varanam Gad Gadaridaya Gira Pulakarnishitam Vapukada Tavanamagrahane Bhavishyati Yugayatam Namishena Chakshusha Pravashayatam Shunayatam Jagat Sarvam Govindam Virahename Ashlishyava Padamgadam Nastumam Adarshanam Marmahatau Karotuva Yata Tatava Vidadatulam Pato Mat Prananatastusa Eva Napara. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all living beings. And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you've invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate, I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One must be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms of your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation and considering a moment to be like 12 years or more, tears